Hi Flosstube, Arlene here, and I'm excited to be back. It is Friday, May 19th. I am recording here in the late afternoon. It is incredibly hot here in central New Jersey on the east coast of the United States for my international friends and visitors. It was earlier this week, on Tuesday, there was this beautiful perfect spring 65-degree day, and out of nowhere, it was predicted on the weather forecast, but Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, it has been in the 90s. And the only reason I'm mentioning this is because I have the air conditioning going, and I did a quick little test, and I'm hoping it doesn't affect the sound quality of this video. I'm usually the kind of person that's trying to hold off to putting on the air conditioning till about Memorial Day weekend, and that's just about electric bills and so on. But there comes a point where it's just time to turn on the air conditioning. So I'm excited to be back here filming my next Flosstube video for you guys. Thank you all so much for those who have been here before, who have watched, who have left such nice comments. I'll say it again, this community has just been wonderful to be a part of. I've been watching lots of you in the last few weeks and trying to leave comments. Thank you for those who've given me shout outs that have just been so wonderful. I know Allie's Stitching Studio posted something on Instagram because she left me a comment saying she did. Thank you so much, Allie, for doing that. Lori at Mischievous Stitches, thank you so much, and I've loved our interactions and conversations. And McKenna at Every Stitch Counts. Those are the ones that I've been working on something and half watching, half listening to Flosstube, and oh my gosh, they've mentioned my name. Also, Fiber Talk, the wonderful podcast that I have mentioned to you guys. If you have not yet listened to them, please do check them out. Gary and Christine, they have some amazing guests, and I have just learned so much. In the last few weeks, they've been doing some midweek podcasts, which has mostly been Gary and Christine talking, although I'm a little behind. Gary, I promise I'm going to get caught up. It seems like they've had some of their guests carry over into midweek. Anyway, even they gave me a little shout out, so thank you. And I'm going to echo what Lori said, which is if you just in sharing the kindness and the good spirits in the world, make sure when you're let somebody know when there's a shout out or a kindness shared. I just think that's so important. There's so many great things going on in this community, and I just love it when we share with each other. If you are new, thank you for joining me, and I hope you enjoy what I'm just going to share some things today. And I have some news that I'm going to share that I admit I'm a little nervous about, but we'll get to that. But first, I picked out some of my projects, some specific projects to share with you guys today, and I'm just going to dive right in. So the first thing, last time when I was sharing my blackwork projects, or was that 2 times ago? Whatever. Last time, I showed you a little pin cushion that was an offshoot of one of the big blackwork projects that I had entered in the contest for Peacework magazine in 2012. Peacework magazine seems, in my knowledge of their history, does a contest about every 2 years. And I say this because I know they had one in 2010, because I know I'd looked up the history of it, and I know they had one in 2014. So in 2014, their contest had a very specific theme to it. So the theme in 2012 was about pincushions. The theme in 2014 was about creating something that involved using words in needlework. And literally the way they titled their contest was, in quotes, "This I have wrought," WROUGHT, Words in Needlework Contest. And there was an issue of their magazine, I guess in 2015, when they were announcing this contest, and they were showing, I think it was a knitted something that had words in it, and they were basically saying, create something that involved words. They have different, it seems like each of their contests, they have some slightly different categories in the way they do things. Their categories for this contest were knitting, needlework, beading, lace/tatting, and crochet. And it was sort of in that moment, that time, which would have been like fall into winter of 2013 into 14, that I was thinking about this contest. I realized I had the perfect thing that I wanted to do something with. I picked up this little book called, The Praise of the Needle, John Taylor's poem of 1631, with annotations by Kathleen Epstein. I picked it up a few years previous to it in a gift shop of a museum. For someone who loves needlework and history, you see a title like this, and you're like, I gotta see what this book is about. This was a poem, and it's 242-ish lines. And this book, is like books of studying in high school English classes, where you have the poem written on one side and annotations and all kinds of explanations on the other. In 1631, this man wrote a poem titled The Praise of the Needle. And there was just something about it that, I had this book and this idea of putting the words, or at least the beginning of the poem, into a needlework piece of some kind. And so the beginning of the poem goes like this: The Praise of the Needle. To all dispersed sorts of arts and trades, I write the needle's praise that never fades. So long as children shall be got or born, so long as garments shall be made or worn, so long as hemp or flax or sheep shall bear their linen woolen fleeces year by year, so long as silkworms with exhausted spoil of their own entrails for man's gain shall toil, yea, till the world be quite dissolved and past, so long at least the needle's use shall last. And that's only the first 10 lines of it. What I ended up creating for this contest was a box. Now, before I show this, I should say that the finishing of it, which I did myself, was, I would qualify it with a grade of maybe a C+ at the time. And since then, it has definitely gone downhill. It's definitely sort of unstretched itself. But here we go. So I made this box, and the box was originally something I got like at Michael's or at a craft store, and I needed to fit the poem. And so it's tiny stitching. Here we go. And if you're really attentive, you will notice that I cut out 2 of the lines. There was something about entrails of silkworms that just didn't sit right with me. So I just decided to cut out those 2 lines because it worked very well without them. And this cord I made out of the thread that was used. This is pulled work. This was something I saw. I was somewhere and I saw someone that had done, it might have been a biscornu or a 3-dimensional something, and this idea of, there's some blue fabric underneath here and different pulled thread patterns or stitches, and using an overdyed thread so that the colored fabric can show through ever so slightly. And so you see different examples of pulled thread stitches going around the sides. And again, you could just see how it's just not super straight or anything. Oh, and then another, a different pulled thread design right here. So when I had sent off pictures to the contest, this was, it passed the first test, and then I had to mail it in, and it turned out I won first place for needlework. So this is the Peacework magazine from September, October 2014, and this was, they didn't do an overall winner for this contest. They just had the 5 categories. Oops. And I won for the category of needlework. It was sponsored. My category was sponsored by the Colonial Needle. I was sent a whole box of a whole bunch of their products, needles, threads, a lot of needles, a lot of their different products, which I've used some of them. It was all nice and good. It was just a thrill to be a part and acknowledged in this way. It was just it's just fun to do something like this. I know they did a contest in 2016, and I know I was so involved actually in one of the projects you're going to see in this video that it just wasn't in my world to be a part of the 2016 Peacework contest. And I just today was able to stop at Barnes & Noble. I think I mentioned in my last video or one of the videos that Peacework, once a year, it's their May-June issue that is devoted to lace, and a lot of it is knitted lace. So for your knitters who are watching, if you have any interest, but I just stopped today and was able to pick up that issue, which is pretty much the only issue that I buy nowadays. I didn't immediately see anything about a contest for 2018. It may be a little too early for them to post it, and I don't know, maybe they won't have one, but we'll see. So there we go. That was the first thing I wanted to share with you for today. The next thing that I wanted to share with you for today is one of the really most recent things that I've been doing in my world. Not the most, but among the most recent. I know it has come up. There are two organizations, national organizations in the U.S., EGA and ANG. Guilds, people belong to guild groups. People like me have memberships because they like the magazines and every so often can take advantage of one opportunity or another, a workshop here or a whatever there. I've never been to either of these groups' big seminars. EGA, I have been to one regional seminar. Pros and cons, everyone does what works for them. But what I'm about to tell you about is related to ANG. ANG stands for American Needlepoint Guild, and it's actually going to come up right now. What is the definition of needlepoint? Does that necessarily mean painted canvas that only is worked in what we call tent stitch or half of a cross stitch? And the answer is no. That is not the only definition of needlepoint. And there's so much crossover between these two organizations and their definitions of needlework. In a lot of ways, it's thread, needle, passing through holes. Okay. Anyway, in one of the magazines, it was just about a year ago, that I discovered an educational opportunity that I decided to take advantage of. This is something I'm literally in the middle of working on right now. Both of these organizations offer educational certification programs, so a teacher certification. If you have ever had the opportunity to take a class, perhaps at a local store, could be anyone, at a seminar, it could be anyone, but some people go after a certification program to give more background, more learning. So they have teacher certification programs. They have judges certification programs. Some big fairs, I know some people talk about entering their pieces in fairs. Some of those fairs, when they look for judges, sometimes they care about a certified needlework judge. I suppose some fairs don't. I don't know. I've never been involved in that aspect. Certainly for those who are familiar with Woodlawn, and if you've ever read the description of the judges for a show like Woodlawn, which is completely devoted to needlework, the people who are those judges are definitely either EGA or ANG, or there's a third organization called NAN. They probably have at least one of the certifications from one of those organizations. They have some other kinds of programs, and one of the programs they have, and I just learned about this last year, although it's been around, I just had never paid attention to it, is something called a Master Needle Artist certification. And I'm just going to read to you the description because it's vague enough. I mean, if I said to you a teacher certification, you get it. Get some big needlework organization to say, yeah, you're a good teacher. If I say a judging certification, you get it. Get some big needlework organization to say, yeah, you're qualified to judge. Master Needle Artist? Here we go. Needlepoint as an art is the goal of the Master Needle Artist program. We are all artists. Discover why you choose colors, threads, stitches, and themes that delight your inner being. This program is specifically oriented to help you unleash the artist within and create original art based upon your individual research. There's a few steps that are involved. The first step is background information or background research about color theory, design, terminology. And then, candidate will choose an art-related subject, i.e., a specific artist, artistic period, stitch, trend, or any other art-related subject. Decision is made, and with the topic approval, the candidate will research their chosen subject, utilizing resources, blah, blah, and write a thesis based on their research. Then, the creative phase, when the candidate creates an original piece of needlepoint art based on their research. This is the point to create, innovate, and experiment with your design to create an original piece of needlepoint art. So there was something to me about, there are times where I've created my own designs when I've gone above and beyond in terms of getting involved in a researching aspect of it. And there was something about this description that really kind of connected with me. And in the right space at the right time, I've gotten into this. My chosen topic came about because of just a number of things that all fell into place, but the short version is Geometric Design in Islamic Art. And this is a book that is a particular inspiration. This author, Eric Brogue. And if I just do, and sorry, there's lots of sticky notes involved, and this is just one major, if I just do a little flip like this, and you get some sense of different things that are in here. And I'm interested in the mathematics of it and the design elements of it. And where I am right now in the program is that I have basically finished my writing, my researching, my writing. I haven't fully submitted that yet. That'll happen literally in the next few weeks. I've actually started some of the designing pieces of it. So I'm in the middle of this program. And I just want to share with you like some of the things I've been doing. Some of the inspiration comes from doing some of your own, taking the mathematical principles that he's sharing and doing constructions. If you can picture or remember times when perhaps you took compass and straight edge in the way that computers can do an awful lot nowadays. You might have done it without a computer centuries ago when a lot of those things that were in that book were designed. So these are me practicing some exercises, and this was all just, you know, working through the incredible instructions in this and other books. Okay. And then just thinking about what can I do more with this. I know that a needlework of some kind is coming down the line, blah, blah. I kept playing with this, and I'm like, I want to bring in color, and I get bored with colored pencils. So I started doing with cheap, this is, go to Michael's and get these artistic canvas things pretty inexpensively. This is the same, this is actually the same design as in one of the pages I just flipped through. And it's actually the same colors, just flipped around, and just how the differences in colors can, or the change in colors can sort of affect your point of view. So I was just sort of playing with that in these, in the fall and winter time as I've been working on the research and the writing. And then I even went a step further. And again, this isn't even my main project, which is coming down the line for this program. I thought, well, one thing that in all the different types of needlework that I've done, one thing I haven't really done is painted canvas. And some of that is frankly because it can be quite expensive. And that's the hand-painted canvases are the ones that are really expensive. You can go and get a painted, which is really printed canvas, through a kit at Michael's or places like those. Or order them online. And some of the printed ones are fine, and some of them are really lousy in terms of not being straight. I wanted to experience a little bit about, well, what is it about those? And so I started doing a little bit of painted canvas, or painting that design that you just saw in a painted canvas. And then I started, let me see what it would look like if I did what you would consider traditional needlepoint, which is to say tent stitch, half or basket weave stitch, and you could tell that this isn't even finished. Um, this bores me. There's just no other way to say it. I get bored doing this. Which is so ironic because a 10 stitch or basket weave is literally half a cross stitch, and cross stitch doesn't bore me. What I think, there's something about the fact that because I painted this canvas, and this is what's referred to as stitch painted, this is what makes hand painted canvases expensive. The time it takes to paint this so that the intersections are very clear what color it is. This isn't me just haphazardly saying, good enough. This was me, actually, I really wanted to time myself. How long would it take for me to do this? And to do this carefully enough was a few hours. And then I didn't leave well enough alone. I didn't even stitch this, but here's just the center part of the design. You know, this was back in like December. I'm thinking, ooh, I'll make a little Christmas ornament for a friend. And then I have another friend who doesn't celebrate Christmas. What if I just made a nice blue and gold thing to turn into an ornament or turn into a little nice decorative item? I never even stitched these, okay? But, you know, it took about an hour just to paint that. So if you want to understand why painted canvas costs a lot, for me to say something like this, which is what, 3 inches or so, took about an hour to paint carefully, it might give you a sense. I'm not saying it's the reason why I don't do it. It costs a lot. And then I went a little nuts and again have not stitched this. I wanted to, you know, what would a different color scheme look like? And this, I actually flipped the design. So instead of this motif being in the center, I did the motif in different places. I proved to myself that there's something about the design already being on the canvas and putting thread on top of it that does not appeal to me. There's something about starting blank and letting the thread bring in the color is what excites me. And that's what I did. That said, I do want to show you. So when I took this and realized, okay, this is boring me, I painted it again, although on a slightly different size. And I did it, and this one I actually did a finished version of. And I did it with, there we go, with different stitches. I think you could see that there are different stitches in there. They are not just half cross or basket weave, tent. Those are all basically the same stitch. They're not just half a cross stitch. There's some different stitches. And this was just my way of, there we go. A different way of framing. This I just did myself. This blue thing is again another one of those artist canvas that you could pick up pretty cheaply at Michael's. Painted it blue. I took the canvas and, you know, shredded down the edges. This is stitched through this thing. Foam board, cheap frame. I like the look of it. It's something that might even actually work if you're doing something on Aida. I don't know how well the frame thing would look on a linen, but it just occurred to me framing something like this for an Aida cross stitch might be something to consider. So it was, you know, all this is inspired by my work on this Master Needle Artist program, and I'm not done. And this is not the real main project of the program, but that's still coming, and I will keep you guys posted as that evolves over the next about year's time in my life. Moving on. One of the reasons that I got inspired, or that description really appealed to me, is because of the project I'm about to show you now. And it was an example of something that I got really into doing the research about. And it was just solely, completely, I'm just personally interested in this. There was no ultimate goal involved. And it has to do, I happen to have a physical picture with this. This is a mosaic that is 10 feet by 10 feet. It hangs in a museum. It actually hangs in the Davis Museum, which is at Wellesley College, which is my alma mater, in Wellesley, Massachusetts. And it's a mosaic. It's got a fascinating history because I did a lot of research to learn about its fascinating history. I call it in my mind the Antioch mosaic. Antioch is an area in modern-day Syria. It's sad to think about where this once was, what that might look like nowadays. In the 1930s, there was some major archaeological excavations going on in this area called Antioch. There were a number of professional archaeologists and art people involved, including somebody at Wellesley, and a lot of people from the Worcester Museum, or Worcester University, and therefore the Worcester Museum has a lot of artifacts from that excavation. The Princeton University Museum has a lot of artifacts from the excavation. And so this is a very large 10 feet by 10 feet one, and it's just something I've always been intrigued with. And a number of years ago, I had this idea that the geometry of it would be really interesting to reproduce in needlework. And it's one of those thoughts that just sort of sat in the back of my mind for a long time, like years. I mean, I have this folder, which I'm going to show you, and I could tell that my first, this is the folder of eventual research material. And the first time I was looking into this idea was in 2007. I didn't actually start doing this until 2014. But in 2014, I decided I was going to do it. I was on campus. I took tons of pictures, lots of them, really blown up close so I can get as much detail as possible. And I decided I was going to do this. A lot of things that I do are graphed out by good old-fashioned graph paper and pencil. I'm going to show you. And it's just that there's the center of it. You can see right there. And you can get some sense like that. I had originally wanted to do an exact 1 inch to 1 foot scale. I couldn't make the math of it work. I couldn't get the detail that I needed. So once I sort of relaxed that thinking and went down to, or up, whatever you would call it, my final piece turned into 12 inches by 12 inches. And that I could make work. Well, let me show you. Here is my version of the Antioch mosaic. So, if I can do this and use my head. Sorry. There we go. So this is a counted canvas piece. It's got a number of, not too many actually, but it's all different types of canvas work stitches. The only way I could figure out on how to do these squares, because they had to be set in at an angle, and they're just, it was done on 24 count Congress cloth, and I feel like I might have talked about Congress cloth in another video, but the short version is Congress cloth is sort of a mix between canvas, like 18 count canvas that you would use for canvas work, and a softer cotton Aida linen kind of feel. So it's a little bit softer, and it comes in a count like 24 count, so you get a little bit more detail than you would if you were to do this like an 18 count. But even then, there was no way I could get the detail of the squares. And so I came up with this solution, and the way I did these squares was actually on a completely separate piece, and I couldn't use like linen. I needed a very high count, but I couldn't use linen because I was trying to figure out how I would attach them. They're actually sort of appliqued on, not quite appliqued. I used silk gauze, and if you've never used silk gauze before, you can get it in very high counts. Most of these were done on 40 count silk gauze. And then you can, the beauty of silk gauze is you could cut it with pretty narrow margins and it doesn't fray. Like if I were to cut linen, it would fray. Okay? and then I laid it down, and then I did the stitching of the border right over the silk gauze, and it worked, and I was just really pleased with the solution that I came up with. So this was just a project that was so all-encompassing to me, because at the same time that I was working on the designing of this, I was doing the research of learning about how the mosaic had come to be at the Davis Museum at Wellesley, and learning about these archaeological excavations. And with pretty minimal research, learned so many of the mosaics that were taken or uncovered were a lot of figural mosaics. Like if you look up Antioch excavations, 1930s, you see a lot of figures, a lot of gods and goddesses and so on. And this one was so geometric, all these geometry things, no pictures of anybody. And that intrigued me. And I was just so curious to learn more and more about it. And just all that research was just fascinating to me. This was a piece that I don't think I have mentioned much. A number of the pieces that I have shared with you, some folks have talked about entering in the Woodlawn Needlework exhibit, which I've entered a number of pieces there. I've also in the last few years have entered ANG, which I was just talking about, does each year a major exhibit at their seminar, and it's a big effort to get a piece entered in there, just because you have to sign all kinds of paperwork and stuff and photo releases. Because what's really cool is that you go to the effort to get all the signatures, especially if you are doing a commercial piece. You have to, be in touch with the person who designed it to get photo releases and so on. So I've sent a number of pieces to the ANG seminar exhibit. I sent that piece that was in 2015, summer of 2015, when I sent that one off. And I don't share much of these kinds of things, but I'll just share with you that one, not only did it win a first place in its category that year, but it also won a Judge's Choice ribbon. And I just, for all the times that as many of us have had moments when we might have been disappointed in times we've entered our needlework in places, and you think, what was that judge thinking? And I've had those moments too. So here was my one time where I had a moment where one judge picked my piece out of all the pieces they could have chosen, and that was just really thrilling. One thing I love about the ANG exhibit is that for anyone who's entering original design categories, but even if it's a commercial piece that you've made your own alterations with, you are required or encouraged for the commercial design thing to submit an artist statement. And I ended up writing not just a statement, but a whole thing. And what I ended up doing, and I'm just showing this to you, and what I love about this even more than that is that I've only had the opportunity to see this exhibit once. I've never attended full-on seminar, but a few years back it was in Philadelphia, and I was able to drive down just for an open public time and just see it. And what I loved is that they had these artist statements sitting out on display. So you could look at the needlework, and if you were so inclined, you could pick up and read what the stitcher wrote about it. And I just loved that. And because there was this opportunity, and because this particular piece had a lot to be said, I wrote this whole thing. And I ended up deciding to add this front page, which was basically, I know this thing is supposed to only be 1 page long, and here's the summary version of it. It's a reproduction of a 10-foot by 10-foot mosaic. But here's the real stuff. So here's some historical photographs when it first came to the college in the 1930s. This was the first space it was, inlaid in a floor. And then here was the second place where it was. And if you want to get a sense of how big the actual mosaic is, here's a picture. And there's a security guy sitting in a chair. Gives you a sense. And, and so I wrote stuff, I made some commentary about some specific pictures. You're also supposed to include your patterns or your design elements, and so here I am including that kind of stuff. And I just loved that maybe there was at least one person who picked this up and read through it and maybe enjoyed it. And just as the last piece of this thing, so again, all the paperwork that they require, especially, I've always had to mail in my, everyone has to mail in their pieces. And because I've never attended, they also have to mail it back to me, and all of that's a big hassle, but I do it because I just love to be able to enter pieces. They do an issue every year that are all the award winners, and it's just works of art, and I love, there was mine, but I was going to show you. So, and again, they have to get all the photo releases to make this possible, to be able to share all these kinds of things. So this was the issue from March of 2016 when they did the photo winners, and I just thought this was super cool. I got the table of contents page. Now, I don't know, maybe it was just like, that's a really convenient square picture, we'll use hers. But I just thought that was cool. And then in the appropriate location, which there was, in the right place, there's mine as well. So I am glad I have the opportunity to share that with you. Okay, so here comes the point in my Flosstube video that I'm getting ready to share with you my new adventure. And a lot of this new adventure is really thanks to all of you guys. I feel like I have learned so much from watching all your Flosstube videos in the last few months especially, and I don't know if you all have ever had the times in your life when you have just been searching for something. I mentioned in my last video, I didn't even realize I had, but I haven't before that point. I'm a teacher. I teach middle school math, mostly 6th and 7th grade, sometimes 8th grade, and I've basically been doing that my entire adult life, over 20 years now. And there are times where I know that being a teacher is part of my identity, and at the same time, there are moments where I just have been looking for some other things to keep the balance. I've always had stitching. I've always had needlework. This has always been an important part of my life and has been part of the balance. But maybe a little bit more is needed at this time. I have, thanks to Flosstube, thanks to being a part of this online community, branching off into the Facebook groups and all of that have come from this in the last few months, just realized more and more different kinds of stitchers than I had been interacting with before this. And so because of all of you, I have opened an Etsy store. It is not the first time I have ever thought about, can I get things that I design published? It's just the first time that I realize I'm going to make this work somehow. So I'm going old school here because I still have not figured out how to do words on a screen the way all the things I've been trying to learn. Editing of videos hasn't been the highest of priority. So this works just as well. I really want to make a go at a business, and I hate using that word business because it's really about artistic passion. And if I can make a little money on it, great. I want to take the artistic passion and use that as an important balance to my life. I know I have tried in the past very loosely, very mildly to figure out what could I do to be a needlework designer. If you want to be a lawyer, there's books or there's websites to help you do that. If you want to be a nonprofit organization leader, there's ways to learn how to do that. There isn't a clear-cut way to learn how to do this, and so I'm just going to start figuring out on my own. I know there's some of Flosstubers who sell some stuff on Etsy, and I've been poking around an awful lot. I know there are people who watch or who buy so much on Etsy, and I'm counting on this community to maybe give me a little thumbs up and say, yeah, that sounds like a good idea, Arlene. So in the last few weeks, I have been learning a lot. I have always in my life done graph paper and pencil, when it comes to designing, and I have purchased a computer program. I'm a Mac person, so Mac Stitch is what I bought, and I've been using it and learning about it. And I've been thinking a lot about what I would do as a stitcher, what I would want as a stitcher. A big thing for me is that I've just never considered before this purchasing PDF patterns, because that was just never anything I wanted. But I've learned so many of you do that. Thank you for teaching me that that's an opportunity out there. At the same time, because I'm not somebody that does PDF patterns, from the very beginning I thought I need to find a way to offer both, and so I have. So here's my store, Works by ABC. My initials are ABC, Arlene Beth Cohen. Right now, what I have up in the store, I'm starting out with 7 patterns. You will see 14 listings, 7 patterns 7 designs that are offered as paper patterns to be mailed to you, and those very same 7 patterns that could be purchased as PDF downloads. So you have both options. They are all full cross stitch. There is no partial stitching. There's no back stitch. What do I hope? I hope it's positive. I hope there's success in this. I hope there's interest. I hope that I can keep going with this. I have so many design ideas, and the truth was I've always collected them, and it's like, what could be the next thing that I could stitch for myself? And you know what, maybe I won't get to stitching everything for myself, but if I can create the pattern for it, maybe there'll be others who will. I will hope that I won't just be limited to cross stitch, because I would like to do other types of stitch designs. This is just simply where I'm starting now. So I want to show you what I'm offering. So the first thing is absolutely inspired by the last piece you just saw. I picked out 2 of those squares that, two of those squares that you saw on the Antioch mosaic, and what I think are the 2 most interesting of those squares that could easily make a small, if you are, that's the other thing. I've never been a stitcher of smalls, but I've learned so many of you are. So I just want to, so you could see I got baggies. You should have seen me at Staples comparing different weights of paper, because I have good weight paper, just what I would want if I was purchasing a pattern. You will get obviously the color pattern. For both of these designs, you will get some background information about this mosaic and the inspiration. Obviously the pattern. Just to share, this one in particular, I forget, it was one of these 2 that, I was picking out the DMC colors, because this was a design I'd actually done, so I, knew the specific colors I was going to use, and I, go to change it from color to symbols, and the program, just picks its symbols, and I couldn't believe that of literally over 100 possibilities of symbols, and there's what, 7, 8 colors in here, they chose 2 symbols that were so similar. And so you need to know from me that I have gone through, that every pattern that I've designed, I have changed symbols as needed so that they are clearly different symbols. So that the one that was like, one was an I, or a very sort of thick letter I, and one was like looked like an L. I'm like, those look too close to each other. I change them all. I make them look like something I would want to stitch. And then on the back, I have information, obviously, threads, stitch count, what size. This particular pattern, so let me start with this one, is the unique one on that design, in that I couldn't make it work as a square. It had to be designed as a diamond, and you'll see that. I'll do a quick little show of the pattern. It's my pattern. I can do this. You see it's designed as a diamond. It mathematically can't work as a square. That said, you could stitch it either way, and you could stitch it without the border, and you could turn it either way. This is one that I was playing. I have stitched it up, and I couldn't decide whether or not I wanted this model with a border or not, or I might actually do two of them. So I just took it off the frame just to be able to show you. So, here's what it would look like. Diamond shape, square shape. It could be turned into a little small, little cute thing. I hear so many people talking about their dough bowls and putting it in there. And again, good paper in a bag if you choose to have a print pattern mailed to you. Or those are the exact pages you would get if you chose a download. And again, the quilt, the other square that was interesting is a quilt square, and I talk a little bit about the background and how I just find this to be so interesting. This is on a mosaic that's 1,700 years ago. It's from the 3rd or 4th century AD, and yet, to me, this could literally be a quilt square in a modern day quilt. That's what I find so fascinating. So again, you get some background information about the mosaic with some pictures, the pattern, information about the stitch counts, and so on for those. Okay. The next pattern to share with you that I have on offer is also inspired by one of the pieces that that I share with you today, and it's from The Praise of the Needle, that poem, that book. Okay. And this is the design I have created for it. I again took out those 2 lines about entrails of silkworms, and so I again only used the lines that I used for my piece. These borders, when I was doing a little further research, I knew I wanted to use the poems lines in a design that I would create for my Etsy store. And so, that no-brainer. But what else would I do with it? And I did a variety of things of research, and what I went back to is what was the poem created for in the first place from 1631. And I went to the source, and luckily, and was able to find online, and you will get all this information in a whole history here. It was created for a pattern book of needlework and lacework designs. In this time period, it was more common for samplers to be not border samplers, like long samplers with border with what word am I looking for? Lines of patterns like this. And so I picked out a few that are from the actual publication in 1631. And again, the scans, the information is all online. I give you all that information, how you could find it. And I charted them. And truthfully, I could have made this, yay long. There's a point where you say, good enough. It really could be done in any colors. This is a blue family that I chose. It really could be done in any colors or more than one color. This is 3 colors, 3 shades of blue. But I think there's something really neat about the historical connection of the poem and using some of the very designs that were in the book that the poem was originally published for. So this one, and just so you get the background information, and just to share with you again, I'm a stitcher. What do I think about when I do patterns? I don't want the pattern smushed down into tiny size just to make it fit into a certain number of pages. If it is going to extend to X number of pages, I let it go to that size. I won't go crazy gigantic, but it's reasonably sized. And this pattern, this one is the largest of mine. It's 2 across, and I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4. It's 5 pages down, but they're not, completely full pages. They, there's margins. I'm just trying to do a quick flip. And again, on the back, I give you dimensions for a variety of sizes of fabric for what you choose. Another thing I have learned so much from Flosstubers is how much folks have their variety of threads and fabrics, and I say use what you love. So if you want to use a different size fabric, go for it. Speaking of use what you love, the next pattern you probably shouldn't be surprised at this point, is from the design that I showed you. And I need to, if I'm going to keep this up, I'm going to work on coming up with good titles. I struggled on the title. I ended up applying this Petals and Stars. And these are the colors that I picked to put on the front. And I try to immediately write so many opportunities to play with color. And what you will get in this one is like the first sheet right away. Some possible color combinations. And you could see there are the two that I used a lot of. Here's an example of 4 shades of the same color family. Just options. I don't have a color key for this one. There, you get your pattern, but it's really use whatever you want. I've written some notes up of what you could possibly do. And here are a couple of sample things. I haven't finished any of these. I've been working so hard to get these patterns, the PDFs, to get the Etsy store, all that. I haven't finished any of my needlework. Maybe I will have these finished into finished objects by the next time I see you guys. So here is one thing I did by just taking the center motif, trying to get this close enough. I have some pretty cool over-dyed flosses. They are pretty amazing. These come from Vicki Clayton hand-dyed fibers. She has an Etsy store. She doesn't have anything like this, at least as of the last time I looked on her Etsy store. I actually messaged her confirming, you're the one I bought these from, right? I bought them from her in person at like a marketplace, and she said yes. She hasn't gotten these on her Etsy store. If you're into just really neat, and anyway, I loved them, and I just loved the effect that I got. When I use overdyed flosses in something like this, I jump around. I don't just stitch straight across because I'm trying to avoid the stripy effect. I also had the slot inspired by you Flosstubers. Some of you have the most amazing fabric collections, and some of your hand-dyed fabrics, which I admit I have very rarely, literally only a couple times in my life, have had the opportunities to really play with stuff like that. But another thing I'd purchased from Vicki Clayton, hand-dyed fibers, at the time I saw her at this market opportunity, was a piece of her hand-dyed fabric. And you can see just another idea that could be done with this pattern is just to stitch the border. Now, it looks okay. I keep thinking that I will take this and I will do something else with it. Not fill in everything, but something else with it, and you're not even really getting the best effect of the I specifically chose out an area of the fabric that had multicolors in it. And I just thought it would be a cool way to highlight the multicolors. I need to do something else with it, but just something I was playing with. So the idea is that this pattern has lots of opportunities. So many people have shown me how creative they are with colors, with threads, with fabric. This might be the kind of pattern you might be interested in playing with. Okay, the next thing I have in my Etsy store, a design that, because I've been doing so much research in the last year or so on geometric design, it shouldn't surprise you that there's a lot of geometrically inspired designs. This is one of them. I decided to call it interlaced rings. The color, I chose to print it in purple. It really could be, pick a thread that you love and go for it. It could all be done in one color. That's what I envision it, but gosh, you guys could surprise me. Someone could come up with something that's all multicolored. The design is the pages of the pattern, and the back of it has the stitch count and information. This is one that I am in the midst of working on, and this is the one that I am doing the sulky thing. So those of you who are on Stitch Mania may have seen a couple weeks ago I posted a post I started with, okay folks, I drank the Kool-Aid, and this was thanks to Minnie Gray, a great Flosstuber, and I'd seen her Flosstube, and she drank the Kool-Aid by buying Coffee Quaker. I drank the Kool-Aid by buying a blendable 12-weight sulky. I was curious to test it out. So many people have been testing it out. I have to admit, the blendable packs, like the 6-pack that you could get on Amazon and such places, there were just no colors that appealed to me. But I was able to go to a quilting store that had a whole display, and this color, which is called periwinkle, I just loved. As I've been stitching with it, I'm trying to get this centered. I have loved the variation of there we go, of the way the colors have shown up. And again, I've been doing a little jumping around. I'm stitching it on 36 count over 2, and that's thanks to those of you who have come before me, who have tested it out, who've said that 32 over 2 doesn't provide good coverage. 36 over 2, good coverage. Am I loving it? Well, I'm going to reserve judgment on that, and it just has to do, as other people have commented, that as you would expect, when you have one strand, it's going to be one round thing as opposed to 2 flat strands that would lay flat. So I'm going to keep going with it, and again, because I love the color and the way the colors play around, which you really can't get the effect of. And we'll just see where that goes and how that progresses over the next bit of time. And I did also, just a little offshoot, I did also buy the same color in what is the 30 weight, which is something that I could use for bobbin lace, because I would love to see how this would play out in a bobbin lace piece. So that will be in my future. 12 weight sulky. Okay, so that is my interlace rings design. It is intended to be the kind of thing of, I have this thread or this color or this overdyed or this whatever that I just love. Maybe this would be the design that you would want to use that color in. The next one I designed came from the inspiration of this was partially sort of 2 different directions. One was from the idea of, there's lots of old pattern books that are available online, old like 1800s, and what could I do with it? Could I find a motif and then play with that motif? And the other thing comes from people who are on Flosstube who do things like this. Wait for it. Who do things like this. Show off beautiful threads. So, I created this pattern. I call it Flowers and Swirls. The colors, as they're showing up here, they don't just show up. This is a case where the computer-generated picture just doesn't show it. These were the colors that I designed it for. You by no means need to use those colors. They are just these are weeks over dyes that I happen to have, and it was just what was in my mind. And as I wrote on here, this design is inspired by a motif found in a 19th century German pattern book. I wanted to create something that would involve just a few colors, and in particular, I wanted an excuse to use overdyed threads. I think this design would look perfectly beautiful in all kinds of color combinations. Use what sings to you. So you could use the colors that I have written in the chart. You could totally, and highly encourage you to use whatever works for you. And then the last pattern to share with you, I'm excited to share with you. I don't know what the reaction would be, but let's find out. So a few weeks back, I saw something online, and about a day after I saw it online, and I'd already been thinking about this, I saw something and I was like, oh my gosh, could I add this to my design list? And then about a day after I had that thought, somebody had saw this very same thing posted on Stitch Mania, if you're on that Facebook group. And that just was the definite for me. Yeah, I got to make this happen. So I printed this out because, again, I haven't figured out how to insert pictures the way so many of you have. This was a post. Ancient skeleton mosaic uncovered in Turkey reads, "Be cheerful and live your life." And I have it printed on 2 pages here. And there's a picture to show the context. It's not, oversized as mosaics go. Certainly not as big as the other mosaic I've done. But because I charted out a mosaic before. And because I have seen so many Flosstubers who are into skeletons, and I want to say hi, McKenna, as well as everyone who, if you have not watched McKenna, Every Stitch Counts McKenna, she's got a friend named Pepe, and you need to go check out Pepe. He doesn't show up in all of her videos, but he's around. And it's not just her. There's a lot of people who like Halloween, who like skeletons, who have that interest in stitching. And I'll be honest, I've never stitched a skeleton in my life. This news story, if anyone paid attention carefully, was a year old. It actually came up a few weeks ago because the way this was from the website, This Is Colossal. It comes up like on a year anniversary. Often news stories just pop up again. And I wouldn't have paid attention to it a year ago. But this year I was intrigued by it. I was also intrigued to kind of research a little bit more, and I did the research. It looks like 2 Greek words. I did the research. I also contacted a friend of mine who's a Greek and Latin teacher, and she conferred with another Greek and Latin teacher, and so I trust them even more than I might trust the internet. What looks like 2 Greek words is actually 1 Greek word. It is all capital letters in ancient Greek. Does it actually mean be cheerful and live your life? Well, it's not quite a literal translation. It could be interpreted that way. But the fact that it could be interpreted that way, well, why not? So, here you go, folks. Here is my chart. Be cheerful and live your life, the skeleton mosaic. Now, this is not a full coverage piece because, just because I was trying to learn my computer program, I tried scanning in a picture. The whole thing comes out as a giant confetti, and there's no way that I would stitch something that looked like that, and I just couldn't imagine anyone else. But what I could do, and what I'm showing you here, is the envisioning you stitching it on a darker, doesn't have to be black, dark color fabric. So I was able to chart this, and because of what it was, I charted in be cheerful and live your life. Now, anyone who wants to stitch this could choose to not stitch the Greek, could choose to stitch the Greek and not stitch the line. To me, I loved the border. And I used graph paper. I admit I just couldn't do it on a computer. I used graph paper to figure that out. And I did write, and I'll say it here, I wrote, I have a whole information, including what I learned about it. I copied a better blog post than the one that I just showed you to give you some background information that I learned. I did write stitching note. The border motif is not an exact repetition all the way around. I needed to adjust in places in order to make it fit. While the mathematical side of my brain was a bit bothered by this, I took comfort in the fact that when I studied the photographs closely, I realized that the original mosaic artist 2,000 years ago had done the same. There are slight variations with the tiles in various places in the border. So just the heads up, for those of us who like to get in a routine, it's 4 of this, 8 of this, and 2 of those, there's a few places where it isn't, and that was just what I had to do to make it fit. So the pattern is not full coverage. And the only way I can envision stitching this, but that's just me, is with over-dyed threads, because if you're trying to reproduce what looks like tiles, these are the colors that show up. So these are Gentle Arts. This fabric, I can't tell you what it is because I don't know. I was almost shocked myself to find that I had this, and then I remembered why I had it. I will never stitch with it. It is awful. It is this awful, awful feel, but man, is it the right color scheme, because it's not quite solid. It was some sort of mild over dye of some kind, but this is like the right color scheme, and this is what matches. Sorry about the odd shades there. So this is what I envision to stitch my version of it. So there you go, folks. Those are the 7 patterns that I am offering for my go at this. I will put my direct link to the Etsy store. If you have never bought anything on Etsy, give it a try. But if you just want to, email me and ask me about this or ask any questions at all, worksbyabc@gmail.com will get you directly to me. Obviously, you can leave a comment here. I really want to make this work. I want to keep doing this. I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed creating these and how many more ideas I have. Cross stitch, counted canvas work, combinations of things, black work, it's all there. Some of the things I've created, some of it hasn't been stitched yet, but I've always wanted to. I need some folks to buy and to be interested. And I also would love if you buy anything or in any way that is appropriate, if you could share. In whatever format, in whatever groups, in whatever places you have of sharing, I would love to get the word out that there's a new cross-stitch designer out there. Now, let's be honest. If you go to Etsy and you type in a search cross-stitch patterns, you literally get thousands. Like, you put it in alone and you get over 100,000 answers. You eliminate the things that are just wrong responses and you get it down and you literally have like 40,000 people or 40,000 entries that are probably cross-stitch patterns. The only way that someone is going to find me is to look for me. So if you have found something that you like, or even if it's not your style but you think this is really cool and you want to support me, if you can find ways to share about my new life's adventure, man, would I appreciate that. I care about doing this right. I like the fact that I wanted to get the right quality of paper. I'm still learning everything about Etsy. I want to make sure I do right by customers in terms of not charging too much for shipping, and I'm still, there's some things I can't figure out until some people buy. And my biggest concern is I want to combine shipping. If you want to buy all 7 patterns, okay, wonderful. I can put them in a priority envelope and within the US. I don't know much about international shipping, although I'm happy to ship anywhere. But I can do all patterns in an envelope that costs less than $7. You don't need to pay $267 or whatever it comes out to for each pattern. I haven't figured out everything. The notice I put at the top basically says, if the system charges you more for shipping, please know I will figure out how to reimburse you until I get this all settled. And if you're watching this video within these next few days, I suspect there's going to be a few bumps in the road. Please bear with me. Help me work through the bumps together. And if you're not, and if by the time you're watching, maybe I have figured out some of the bumps and they're smooth sailing. Okay, this video has probably gone on long enough. Thank you so much for watching, if you're still with me. I'm sorry I didn't get to any bobbin lace today. For those who thank you so much for been supporting my lace interests. I will definitely show some bobbin lace next time. Thank you all for this wonderful, wonderful Flosstube community. You all have taught me so much. I appreciate everything. You have inspired me. Clearly, you have inspired me. And I just need to say thank you. Till next time.